One, and we are recording with Dr. Joseph Ladapo, and your book Transcend Fear is fantastic. And there's actually I kind of want to talk about some stuff in it that I don't know if it's entirely COVID related. I thought your um I thought your experiences with that trauma based healing with the Navy SEAL, that kind of struck a chord with me more than anything else. Like I was getting, gear. I've interviewed Dr. McCullough and Dr. Malone so many times, and I was gearing up for like another COVID book. And then it started with, I mean, really a beautiful story about, opening the doors of trauma and those things that arise from within and how it can completely cause regression. And as someone that lost a sibling to suicide in 2014, I do completely identify with that. You revert to a childlike state, and it was a I wasn't expecting that in a book about COVID, but here we are. But with that, Dr. Ladapo, please introduce yourself, sir.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for having me on, and hello to your listeners. Yeah. So I'm a professor at University of Florida, and I'm also the state surgeon general here in Florida. And thanks for your words about the book. And
Sure.
I'm real sad to hear about your brother. So thanks for sharing that too.
Yes, sir. Um, it's something that kind of helps me perpetually move through it, is talking about it and being open. I've had a lot of people tell me it's kind of disarming how open I am about it. But I find I have to be. If I bottle it up and don't look at it, then it just swells, it grows, and it kind of comes out in unsuspected and unexpected ways. And the best way to go towards it is just what's that quote? I think it was Buddha, how do you avoid how do you avoid the heat of the fire? And it's go sit in the center of it, because once you get to the hottest point, everything else is colder. And that's kind of how I think about it, is like just walked, and it's very easy to say in a, sitting in a leather chair 9 years removed from the event. It's very easy to say that, tell that to me in 2014, I'd probably punch you in the face. But
Mhm.
that is kind of the way to go about it. But for everybody listening, I will put the book in the description. You can get it on Kindle. But to refer to what we're talking about, the healing methods you did with that former Navy SEAL, how did that affect your view on COVID, on lockdowns? Because that's not your materialistic, scientific, traditional medical view. Yet it had profound effects on you.
Yeah. And profound is an understatement, truly, man. Yeah, well, so I described an experience I had. I basically There was a babysitter who, molested me when I was a little kid, and I didn't know when it happened because I was, maybe 4 years old or something. I wasn't able to process it. And instead, and I only know this in retrospect, but instead, what happened was that because it was just too much for my consciousness to take in and to process, I basically disassociated.
Yeah.
And before I worked with the Navy SEAL Christopher Maher, I actually didn't think anything really important happened. I knew, obviously what she did was wrong, but I thought I was fine. Thought I was unaffected. I was going through life. Everything's fine. And I noticed that I wasn't. I actually wasn't even aware that I wasn't emotionally connecting with other people, but because I thought it was normal. So it wasn't that it was something that was that really captured my attention. And so I'm going along, doing well, right? I go to Wake Forest for college. I was
Harvard
a
Med
college
School.
athlete, get to med school, get into Harvard,
Yeah.
on paper, look
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Looks like, a real shining example
Yeah.
of look good, everything.
Pick yourself
But
up by your bootstraps. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, but the reality is that the very opposite was happening at the level that matters the most, which is the level inside. And but I didn't know. And I was fortunate enough to fall in love with my angel of a wife. And when I fell in love with her, one of the things, and I guess one of the ways you can know that you're actually in love, is that love is the most powerful force in the world. There's nothing, that is the most powerful thing in the world. And when I fell in love with her, it made the things that all the stuff that we carry around that we don't even know is a problem,
Yeah.
right? You fall in love and it's like the curtains are pulled. It's not, you don't have any choice
Yeah.
about it,
Yeah.
right? It's like that light just shines on everything, shows everything. And so that happened to me. Not consensually, right? Because love is more powerful than I
Yeah.
mean, love is us, but it's not something we can control. And when that happened, it really felt like an emotional volcano. My life went into a tailspin because all this stuff that was essentially connected to that experience that I had when I was 4 or 5, that somehow our minds are amazing magicians at protecting us. And my mind had taken stuff and stored it in places and that I didn't even know, right? But
Yeah.
that's what your mind does to help you survive. All of that just blew up. Everything fell off the shelves. And all of a sudden, I had this, obviously, this very powerful love for my wife, and then all this other stuff, like my inauthenticity with emotional connection, my fear, which was a big component of my life, all my judgment. I was very judgmental. I was a very judgmental human being, but really it was to protect myself. And all this stuff just exploded out, just came right out in the open into this intimate space of love with my wife. And you might even wonder, well, how the heck did you fall in love with your wife? Well, I fell in love with her accidentally.
Found her at the airport.
Yeah, yeah. We met in an airport and we ended up, of course, she's my soulmate, so
Yeah.
it was intended.
Yeah.
But we met at an airport. We're both coming back from the Virgin Islands. And we ended up talking the whole way. She was going to California. I was going to Boston. We had a connecting flight in Newark. And we talked for hours. So I was like, yeah, let me ask her for her phone number. We just
Sure.
talk, we had a great conversation. It seems like a shame to just, and so then we played phone tag for a bit. She was in Cali. I was in Boston I was a med student. At that time, I was in graduate school. And, and then we picked up where we left off and we were talking. And we would talk for 6, 7, 8 hours, nine
Yeah.
hours.
Yeah.
I'd see the sun come up.
Yeah.
Didn't know it. I was I was falling in love.
Yeah.
So so when she came to visit and we decided that we didn't want to be apart, so please, so what's the point of being apart? We love it, we just want to be
Yeah.
with each other.
Yeah.
She moved to Boston. We moved her to Boston. But like I had this trunk full of stuff that was that my fear, my intimidation about sex and sexual
Sure.
energy, my I mean literally my fear, like fear of everything. It was just a major
Yeah.
component of my life. Checking everything internally before I opened my mouth, before I took an action. Like all this stuff came out. And and my wife, fortunately, she has a lot of intuition. And so she was like, Joe, you got to see a therapist, and I went and saw one. He was a lifesaver, like a total lifesaver, because I was like, one of the things you mentioned, regression. I had one of the things was that I was dealing with at that time, after falling in love, was that when things came up about sex, I mean, it sounds crazy, but I remember it very well. When things came up about sex, I would start to feel like my consciousness changed.
Yeah.
So I would start to feel like a 3 or 4 year old. I
Yeah.
lose access to my executive function, like my ability to make decisions, like take the bus or take the train. What toppings on the pizza.
Yeah.
Just simple stuff, just stuff that we take, that your adult self knows how to do. I would lose an ability to do things like that, to make that. And it sounds nuts, but literally it would be like transplanting. And really, actually, I should describe it more accurately. It was like something from the back came to the front, in terms of like my interface with the world.
Yeah.
And really that thing had always been in me. And that was, as you can imagine, extremely crippling. In addition, one of the experiences I had was that when I was in that state, it would be like even my vision changed. So it would be like I was looking through, if you could imagine someone taking saran wrap
Okay.
and and putting it in front of your eyes, and that's how you see the world. It would be like that. Like it would be grainier, hazier, and I would be in that state hours. Hours is probably the longest it lasted. Um, and the only way I got out of that state, and it's just weird. I mean, it's just God's hand telling me what to do. I would basically get I would literally verbalize my love for my wife, and push everything out of my mind
Yeah.
and just think about her love. And I would be warped back into the present. And I'd be back as my adult self. And then if something came up about sex related sexual energy, knocked me right back.
Mm.
And so I was in a I was my life was just totally upside down, and there was a lot of pain. I mean, there was a lot of suffering. Like when I would be in those states, I would feel like, if you could imagine a fruit, that what it contained was misery and sadness. Biting into that fruit, that experience, like that's how it felt. Like that was beyond like not being able to, not having executive function, and the blurry vision. It was such a miserable state. Like it was just tapped right into a channel of sadness and misery. And so I started seeing a guy and a therapist, and he definitely helped me. Like he helped me get some space from that. He helped strengthen my tools to be able to get out of it. And it was a lifesaver. It was just it was ironic too, because at the same time that I was having experiences where I was in touch with pure sadness and misery, I also had, when I was in my adult self, like just the purest, warmest, just the most nurturing love
Uh,
experience with my wife.
the hot tub
And
feeling. You get into a hot
yeah,
tub and
oh
it's just
man.
right up to the neck, and you're like,
Oh,
this is
yeah. Yeah, on a cold day too, right?
it's you start to understand a dog, an old dog, when you start to get behind his ears. My dog was 17, and I remember scratching behind. I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
you get it. You start to get it, right?
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, so the guy I was seeing, he was an angel. Yeah, just the right guy for me too, because I was very distrustful.
Hmm.
And he helped me get some space. And so I was able to function more, and sort of more good times. But I the stuff was coming up, and other stuff would come up, and then
Hmm.
we had kids, and that brought up new stuff, in terms of my own issues that came out. And so my poor wife, this is probably, let's see, it was 20, I think it was 2020, 2019, December 2019, that I saw Christopher meet her. So my poor wife, she'd been doing this and dealing with me and my ups and downs for like 15 years. And I mean, she was unfortunately at the end of her rope.
Yeah.
And it made me really sad because I loved her and I wanted her to be happy and well. But I also I was trying very hard. I mean, we did different programs and stuff to try to, I was trying really hard, but I just couldn't get good enough to free enough of my stuff to be able to, create a sustained like happiness and peace without me doing
Yeah.
this number. And then one day she came home and she says, "Hey Joe, I found someone for you to see. I think this is a guy that can help you." And I was very reluctant, even though I
Yeah.
wanted. I mean, it was expensive, and like I was like, "Oh, okay." But she was at the end of her rope, so ultimately I didn't have a choice, you know. So I went to see him. And so first I read his book, and because he asked people to read his book first, and I read his book, and it's a wild book. I mean, it will appear to be wild for most of us. It's called Free for Life, and I was like, when I finished the book, I was like, okay, like I don't understand all the stuff that he's written, but my sense is that this guy knows what he's talking about. And so between that and my poor wife being at the end of her rope, I went to see him. And he was in Los Angeles. He's in Los Angeles. He lives in a condo off of an apartment in Marina Del Rey. And I still remember my first day. And basically, it was a 5 day thing. And I've seen Christopher since and done more stuff. But basically, in 5 days, um, I proceeded to have like the most important experience in my life and the most freeing experience in my life and the most invaluable experience in my life. Just like for all the money in the world, I would never go back. And if it cost me all the money I ever had to be able to do it, I'd do it in a heartbeat. It was just an amazing experience, and I can tell you more about the details of the techniques. But I mean, it really was a miracle, even though there's a science to it.
Sure.
But it really, and there's more than that to it. There's a God to it too,
Sure.
and that's with a capital G.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, it really was the most amazing experience of my. It was a miracle.
It's the only thing I can, I guess, relate to is the idea of it being all, all good on paper. I was in like perfect shape, got into medical school at the University of Miami, like published research. I was like, Captain America, I'm going to do this. When my brother died, I remember like a day later, I like told my parents, I was like, everything's okay. And I now know that they looked at each other and they're like, oh God, like his head's in the sand. I don't want to address it. And
Yeah.
I didn't have as much of the child regression. I had some of that. I always just remember the feeling of anxiety that when you're on a plane and you get up from a nap and you go walk to the restroom and it's never quite as steady as like walking on a sidewalk. There's just like a little, you're aware that you're over nothing. I would start to get that feeling about the earth itself. And it was
Mm,
just it still puts chills up my spine. And
mm,
it sounds weird, but I would almost start to see like everyone as just biology, like eyeballs and brains and like skeleton, not
mm,
visually see it, but
mm,
and like I couldn't like executive
mm,
things you don't think about. Yeah, I'll have cheese and pepperoni on it. I couldn't even think about normal talking things that
mm,
right now you and
mm.
I aren't thinking about English, right?
Right, right.
It's
No, I get it, brother. I get it.
it was that. And yeah, I mean, it completely destroyed me for several years, and it was only after years of therapy and, love from my parents that I was able to claw back up. And ironically, you went and saw him in December 2019. I started this podcast in December 2019. I actually started it
Mm,
the day that December 12th, the day COVID came to the United States. So I don't know what that means, but
mm, mm.
I've had my own.
By the way, my first day with Christopher was on December 12th.
No way. full disclosure, this podcast is sponsored exclusively by Christopher, and this entire thing's been scripted. That's nuts, man. And I can prove it.
I
I can
think
literally
that's right. I got to double check. I think that's right, though.
fake
I think
news.
so. I think
Don't you
so. Maybe it
spread
was the week before. Maybe I'm
misinformation.
wrong.
Spreading. I'm already banned from YouTube for spreading misinformation. Don't make me. But I didn't have a Christopher experience. Therapy was great. I highly recommend seeing a professional, but one or two experience with psychedelics helped. But honestly, I would say the biggest one, and this sounds cocky. It's gonna take a minute to explain. But like whenever I've put my mind to something, I've just done it. I was in seventh grade. I decided I want to start lifting weights, and to me, I just like looked at 5 years from now as if it was right. I could just ride out, and I was like, if I just do this every day for 20 minutes, I'll get buff. And I was like, fair enough. Got to college, was a frat boy, weightlifter, meathead. And I remember one day I was sitting in the frat house and I just went, I'm gonna be a doctor. And my friends were like, what are you talking? Like, you're an idiot. And I was like, no, I'm gonna be a doctor. That's just all I did for 3 years. Study, graduated magna cum laude, scored in the 95th percentile in the MCAT, and just went and did it. When I started this podcast, I just decided I was going to do it. It was going to be great. Just very confidently, perhaps cocky, but confident. And I started to have this idea that what would happen if I got everything I wanted? Like, then what? And I was talking to Charlie Duke. He's the youngest man to ever walk on the moon. He's one of four men alive that has walked on the moon.
Hmm.
And I was asking, I don't know why I was talking to him about this. Like, I should have been asking about, walking on the moon and meeting Kennedy. But instead, I was like, hey, what happens if I get all the money I want? And like a gentle soul, he told me about how once he came back from the moon, there was nothing else to do. He got to the literal highest point of his career. I mean, more men have been the president, about four times more have been the president. And he said he started drinking and he started just pursuing money. I think he worked for like Coors Light and was making more money than he knew what to do with. Just drinking all the time. And he's like, I was still miserable.
Mhm.
Finally told me that he just had an experience, I think, from his wife. And as someone that grew up like in Georgia, I understand the proselytizing, the brimstone and hellfire, and that drives people away. And but he said it very much like a scientist. I remember, and I don't remember if it was off camera or on camera, but I remember he told me, he goes, well, the only thing better than walking in the moon is walking with God. And in my mind, I was like, that's a great Hallmark card, but okay. And he told me very much like a scientist, and as a biology major, got into med school, and as a guy that walked on the moon, it's like, all right, see that, eye to eye on science. And he goes, just treat it like a science variable. Because I told him every day I meditate. He was like, next time you meditate, just ask God to come into your heart. And he's like, and if it doesn't work, then all right, it doesn't work. But it's very much so like, hey, you got a cold, take a NyQuil. And if it doesn't alleviate your symptoms, then maybe NyQuil's not for you. Maybe you got to try Benadryl. And there was such like I'm so used to resisting it, having grown up in like a conservative Catholic household, had nuns and priests, and cut your hair, you demon, and I was just like, all right, I'll try it. I'm a science-minded guy. I, as sure as I cannot lie to you and say, hey man, I'm gonna let go of this water bottle, it's gonna fall to the ground. And I hate being it because I lived in like southern Georgia and I understand the whole, you will find the Lord. And like I cannot look someone in the eye and tell them it didn't work. My life has been irreversibly better. I've been a better person. I don't abuse alcohol. I am more loving. I do more charitable acts. I've reduced my ego. I'm more vulnerable. And I am more at peace. Now, I
Mhm.
still have anxiety, as I'm sure you do, just as a human being in this life. But man, the earth is no longer that wobbly trip to the bathroom on the plane. I no
Mhm.
longer regress into I still have days, but there's just a core, there's an anchor there. And I think that's probably the only thing I could relate to you with that is I get that. There's
Cool.
you can't tell anyone. You gotta experience. It's telling a blind person about color. You're like, dude, I don't know what to, I don't know what to tell you. But yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, no. And thanks for sharing that.
sure.
People it's just really fascinating. Like I describe what happened to me, but how everyone, the experience of different types of stressors or traumas, you know, this experience of that is just like how it affects your mental, physical, emotional, spiritual being is just different for everyone. Um, and you just, when you were describing your how it felt like when you'd be, describing comparing it to walking on a plane. Yeah, no, I totally can imagine, like, and it's no, it's just, I mean, I think it's part of the beauty in us being reflections of God and all being like unique divine beings. I certainly don't understand it, but so one of the things that made me think of was, so during the days, I didn't talk much about, I talked a little about it in the book, but during the days working with Christopher during those 5 days, and it was 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the afternoon, or basically 2 hours twice a day with time in between to integrate the stuff that you did. There was the techniques that he uses. So it's a lot of it is based on Chinese meridian theory.
Hmm.
And what's cool is that even though we're all different, we all sort of the biology or metaphysics or whatever the word is of how stress affects us is essentially the same, and that it comes out in terms of getting it out of your body. The methods are the same. The order can change, and like how it like what comes out and what doesn't. So so he uses, so it's a lot of the stuff based on Chinese meridian theory, and I don't have a super great understanding, but basically this main idea is that whatever's in your life is in your body, whatever's in your body is in your life. And the idea is that, like, the stress, the fear, the anxiety, the self-doubt, the jealousy, the anger, um, all that stuff, it's all stored in your body.
Okay.
So one of the things he does is you do these physical manipulations, and as you do them, they pretty much most all of them are initially very painful. But the good part about the pain, so the pain indicates where there's an obstruction of chi, and and it hurts because that's what happens when you have obstruction of chi and you like get at it with one of these techniques.
Where there's no movement, there's pain, and where there's pain, there's no movement. I think that's what you said.
Yeah, where there's no flow, there's pain. Where there's pain,
So so
where
close.
there's pain, there's no flow, and where there's no flow, pain is sure to come. Something
Yeah,
like that.
that was close enough.
Yeah, yeah. And so you do this. So there are these different physical manipulations, like different physical stuff, and all of it like painful at first, some like incredibly painful, like some of the most pain I've been in my life, which sounds scary. And he warns you that that's how it is in the book.
Yeah.
But what's great is that it's temporary. And when you get to the other side of it, that means you've got flow coming, the pain's down, and now you've released something that your body was holding in its muscles or in different parts or in organs that correspond with meridians and stuff. So you're feeling when that pain goes, like your body's let go of it, and that was a major part of it. And there are other things that he did, but it's like for everyone. I mean, he does different order for different people. He's worked with thousands of people, but for everyone, like essentially the techniques are the same. Just like some people might do something first, some people might do something else first, and how people respond differs. So one of the most powerful days for me was, I think it was like day 3, and he was doing something called Malshing, which which involves the bladder meridian. And this meridian, I'm not going to give a complete description because I don't study this stuff or know this stuff, but this meridian runs like through your calves and through your thighs, and I guess through your bladder,
Hmm.
and he works on that one first because from what he writes in his book, it has the most access to your like emotional, mental, and spiritual being. And so you lay down, and he, in some specific way, will face down, and he walks on the back of your legs. And it starts very painful at first. And eventually, like the pain lightens and lightens. And we had done it a couple times. And I think it was on the third day when we did it, like, I mean, I had some pretty wild experiences. Uh, and it went from being very painful to actually feeling good. Like it felt good,
Yeah.
which is great because that means that you now have chi flowing through that meridian in a way that it wasn't before. You opened a blockage. And that's great because it
Yeah.
means you also have more access to your being. But that particular day, when he was done, I had a really like cool experience. So I started shivering. I was frozen, like I felt so cold, but the cold was from here to here. Like it was just my
Oh,
chest
wow.
was freezing, and my teeth were clattering. And Christopher had me lay down and put blankets on me. I mean, I was freezing, like it was freezing, but it was just here. And he lays me down, he had me lay on the couch, he put some blankets on me. I was like, Christopher, what's happening? What is this?
What are you doing to
And
me?
he said, your heart had fright. So there's fear, which has and it stuff, emotions have temperature. And so, fear is cold, fright is freezing.
Okay.
And when I had that experience when I was 4 or 5, the woman, apparently what happened is like it put fright in me.
Sure.
And so he he told me that what I was feeling was the fright burning off, was the fright going
Oh,
away, off out of my heart. And it just sounds like effing unbelief. Like how the hell that, but I was there,
yeah.
and I had the
Yeah.
experience. And that was just one of them. And I've had just a lot of wild experiences that that I can't explain with that are inexplicable to me. But the good news for me, I mean, I think that they're cool experiences. I don't really need to understand them. I just appreciate having the freedom, like the additional freedom that
Yeah.
comes with it, right? Free of fright, free of fear, free of self-doubt. And it's not, and then you also learn tools is the other thing, that he teaches you tools to be able to keep building and developing, which is mostly a lot of exercises, a lot of this physical stuff to just keep the chi flowing. And so you have more access to your being, like your true being, like your being that is aligned with God, when
Yeah.
divinity. And yeah.
It's I know I've kept you 2 minutes past when I said I would. But like not needing to understand it. And that's like, again, that's the materialistic, scientific, as Ram Dass would say, like the Western rational mind wants to say, like, I need to see a spectrometer of it. Like, where is the Tommy when Charlie Duke told you to ask God, can we get can we evaporate the gases and see what the wavelengths is? No,
Mhm.
man. Or maybe it could. I don't know. It might be as alien and distant to us as like germ theory was to George Washington. I don't know, right? In the Civil War, they're packing wounds with dirt, and you look at him like, "The hell are you doing?" Might be. I don't know. It might be that. It might not also be explainable. It might be on a different plane. And
Mhm.
I guess the one thing I think about is like trying to understand placebo effect. And sure, I bet it's fascinating and people can go in and learn it. But when you see people try to needle it apart and they're like, we just got to
Yeah.
understand it because we don't know why. And I always think sure, that's kind of always pushing the edge of human knowledge. Yeah, sure, go find it. Go find out what dark energy is. I don't know, but like I also think about you know tell the woman going through birth or the guy with a shattered femur, and when you gave him a sugar pill and he thought it was morphine and now he's not in pain.
Mm.
Tell him we don't understand placebo. Look at you and he'll punch you right in the face. he'll, he'll tell security to take you out of the hospital. And that's kind of how I look at it. Do I understand it? Not at all. Would I like to? Sure.
Yeah.
Whatever, man. I don't understand. I don't understand how plastic water bottles are made. I don't know how an iMac works. How do I know? I
Mm.
don't know. I don't know how this camera operates, but we're doing this thing now and we're talking. I don't care. And probably not the most scientific opinion, but it's my opinion. What do I care?
Mm.
I ask God to come in my heart, my life's better.
Yeah.
What do I care? I don't care how alcohol binds to my brain. When you have a beer on Christmas with your brothers and you're just laughing, I don't care how IPA works. It's good, and I'm buzzed. What do I care? What do I care, right? Um, but yeah, man, that was awesome. I've kept you 5 minutes longer. I could talk to you forever, but I don't want to. I don't want to hold you. I'd love
Yeah.
to
My
have you back
apologies.
on here. I'd love to have you on here again, man, and talk more about that. And yeah, I guess it is a book about COVID and lockdown. So if you want to hear all that, go get the book and read that. I'm just now
Yeah. Well,
realizing it's
well,
been
and the connection for me right before the pandemic was that I would never have been able to do the things
never.
that I did,
Yeah,
right? Because I would have
absolutely,
been too riddled with fear, or
absolutely.
just too caring about what other people think
Oh
about
yeah,
me or what say about me, or too blinded by politics or my own
sure,
personal investment in something
sure.
to see distinguish truth from like desire. And we saw a lot of that in during the pandemic. But yeah, hopefully we can. It'll be
I'd
great
love to,
to
dude.
do this again, talk
That would be
more.
awesome. I'd love to. And I do think about kind of like you meeting your wife, and it's just when you do fall in love, it's just divine intervention. You're like, oh, that was gonna happen. The sun rising. It's a Swiss watch moving. You're like, the gears were gonna just shut up, accept it, right? It's I do kind of look at doing this podcast because I got banned from YouTube for interviewing Dr. Malone and Dr. Malone, and I didn't care. They told me, it's like, if you do another episode, you're gonna get banned. I was like, whatever. I think I had Dr. McCall on like an hour later, just middle finger out. But like, I don't think that I could have done a podcast and just not cared what 95% of people said is you're spreading harmful I don't think I could have done that had I never gone through my own experiences with crippling
Mm,
anxiety, with because you get to the
mm.
other side and then someone's like, I don't like your YouTube channel. And you're like, dude, you're like,
Thanks for your feedback.
you're like, I've walked through the fire. I don't care. It's like telling an 80-year-old you don't like what music he's listening. He doesn't care. He's gonna throw his colostomy bag at you. This dude stormed D-Day, right? You don't care. That's
Yeah.
I do look at that as like, oh, now it makes sense. Like, and same with you doing that treatment right before like the biggest global fear, psychosis, phenomena, psyop, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, I don't think it's a coincidence that right before the race, God pulled the splinter out of your foot. Like it was
Yeah.
that timing wasn't an accident. So
Yeah.
that's badass. But Dr. Ladapo, I will let you go. I will email you after this, and I'd love to have you back on. Well, maybe one day we'll get to quarantines, but I want to keep talking about these experiences. These sound sick. And I
Yeah.
yeah, man, shout out to that guy. What's his name? Christopher
Christopher Mayer.
Mayer.
Yeah. Maher.
Yeah, yeah. We'll shout out to that guy.
Yeah.
Dr.
We'll do it
Ladapo.
again. We'll do it again.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
We'll get
Beautiful.
the. All
Yeah.
right,
All right.
brother.
All right. Thank you
Hey,
so much
God
for
bless
doing
you.
this. You as well.
Yeah.
God bless you. And as the comedian Duncan Trussell always says, a sign of enlightenment is not being afraid to express love. So as someone I've met 45 minutes ago, Dr. Ladapo, from the bottom of my heart, I love you, brother. Thank you so much.
I love you too, man.
Thank you. God bless everybody. I love all of you. Till next time, Dr. Ladapo.